Ready to jump into some fascinating research on diabetic neuropathy. This paper we're looking at today, dense, but it's got some real gems in there, stuff you'll definitely want to know. We're going to unpack it all, make it crystal clear what matters, what it means for you, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Sound good?
Sounds great. And it's a myth buster, this paper,
Yeah.
about diabetic neuropathy. People think it's just one thing.
hmm
This research shows it's a lot more complex than that.
It really does. So first things first, what are we even talking about here? When we say diabetic neuropathy, we mean nerve damage, and not just in one spot, right?
Right. Imagine your nervous system is like a massive electrical grid, okay, powering your entire body. Diabetic neuropathy, or DNN, it's like having outages or shorts in different parts of that grid and where those problems are. Well, that makes all the difference in how it affects you.
And this paper gets into all sorts of different types of DN, but let's be real, in everyday life, what are the ones we're most likely to see?
You're right. No need to get lost in the weeds here. Two big ones are DPN and CAN, diabetic peripheral neuropathy and cardiovascular autonomic neuropathy. DPN, that's the one that often starts with that tingling or numbness, that pins and needles feeling, especially in the feet.
Ah, yes. The stocking and glove description. I remember reading about that.
Exactly. It's often described that way because the numbness and pain, they tend to start in the extremities, your hands and feet, and then gradually move upward. But here's the thing. You might not even notice it at first, or you might just brush it off as no big deal. But as DPN progresses, it can make walking really tough, increase the risk of falls, even lead to problems with wounds healing properly.
And that's not something you want to mess around with. Okay, so that's DPN. What about CAN? What's going on with that one?
Now, CAN is tricky because it often flies under the radar until it's pretty advanced. It affects the nerves that regulate your heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, all those automatic functions you don't even think about.
So basically, the control panel for your vital organs is glitching out.
That's a great way to put it. And the scariest part is you might not have any noticeable symptoms, not until something serious happens, like a sudden drop in blood pressure or even, in some cases, a heart attack.
Okay, so this is serious stuff. Definitely not just a little tingling we're talking about here. So we've talked about what it is, the different ways this nerve damage can actually show up. Now let's get into the why. Is it really just about keeping your blood sugar in check, or is there more to the story?
Well, if it were that simple, this research paper wouldn't be nearly as long. Of course, managing your blood sugar is crucial, but this paper really highlights how much more complex the whole picture is.
Okay, so spill the beans. What are the risk factors we need to be aware of?
Some of them, probably no surprise. Age, cholesterol levels, smoking, those are all part of the larger picture of your health. And then there's obesity, which plays a huge role in insulin resistance.
Right, makes sense. But I feel like there's always more to the story than just the usual suspects. What else did this research dig into?
This is where it gets really interesting. The research dives into something called social determinants of health. Basically, where you live and what resources you have access to can actually increase your risk of developing diabetic neuropathy.
Wait, really? So even if I'm doing everything right, managing my blood sugar, eating healthy, my zip code could still be working against me?
It's not about blame, but about recognizing the impact of these larger forces. Think about it. Access to healthy food, affordable health care, even just safe places to exercise, those aren't guaranteed, and they can make a huge difference.
Okay, so we're talking about this whole web of factors that play into your risk. Let's say someone starts experiencing symptoms. What happens next? How is diabetic neuropathy actually diagnosed?
You might be surprised to hear that it's not always as straightforward as you might think. Traditional methods often involve physical exams and nerve function tests, like that filament test where they poke your foot to see if you can feel it.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Seems a little low tech, though.
Right, and that's part of the issue that this paper brings up. Those tests are useful, but they're better at catching DN in its later stages. So by the time someone notices symptoms, and those tests actually pick up on the damage, it might be more advanced. The research suggests that earlier detection is really key here.
That makes sense. So what's the solution? Are there more advanced tests available?
There are, and this is where it gets exciting. The paper talks about newer diagnostic tools, things like skin biopsies and corneal imaging that could help catch those early signs of nerve damage even before symptoms show up.
So earlier detection is key, but what about treatment? Is there a way to actually reverse the damage once it's done?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
No.
And while there's no magic bullet to completely reverse DN, this research does offer a sense of hope. And it all comes down to inflammation.
Inflammation, isn't that more of a joint pain thing?
We tend to think of it in certain contexts, But inflammation is actually a key player in lots of diseases, including DN. Think of it like this high blood sugar. It triggers this kind of alarm system in your body. And that alarm, it sets off this whole cascade of inflammation. And over time, that chronic inflammation, it really does a number on those delicate nerves.
So it's not just the high blood sugar itself, it's the body's response to it that causes the real damage.
Exactly. And this is where treatment gets really interesting. The research highlights how targeting inflammation could be the key to managing DN more effectively, maybe even slowing down its progression.
Okay, so how do we tackle this inflammation? Are we talking medications, lifestyle changes?
Yeah.
Well, the research points to a multi-pronged approach. Medications like gabapentinoids and antidepressants, those can help manage the pain. And then there are topical treatments, things like capsaicin creams that can provide more localized relief. But what's really exciting is the potential of lifestyle interventions.
Let's talk about that. What kind of lifestyle changes are we talking about here?
A Mediterranean-style diet, rich in fruits, veggies, healthy fats. That's shown real promise in reducing inflammation throughout the body. And of course, there's exercise. It's not just good for your heart, it's good for your nerves too.
So it's not about becoming a marathon runner, but just incorporating more movement into your everyday life.
Exactly. Every little bit counts. And for those experiencing more severe pain, the paper even mentions things like spinal cord stimulation, which can actually interrupt those pain signals traveling from the nerves to the brain.
Wow, spinal cord stimulation. That sounds pretty high-tech. It's amazing to see all the different avenues researchers are exploring, but with all this talk of different types of DN, risk factors, diagnostic tools, treatments, it's a lot. Is there one key takeaway you hope people walk away with from all of this?
I think the bottom line is this diabetic neuropathy is complex. It's not one size fits all. Your experience with it might be totally different from someone else's, but knowledge is power. The more you understand about DN, the more proactive you can be in managing your risk, recognizing those early signs, and working with your doctor to find the treatment plan that's best for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about taking charge of your health, being your own advocate, and staying informed. And hey, that's what we're here for, right? Thanks for taking this deep dive with me. Until next time.